Today I'm taking a look at Peacemakers, Horrors of War. This is a follow-up to Peacemakers, which came out a few years ago. I did not play that original game, but this is basically a skirmish game where you are trying to make peace between multiple animal armies. It's from Snowdale Design. This is a review copy that was sent to me, so let's go ahead and take a look at the game, and then I'll come back and share with you some of my thoughts.
Okay, here we have a game of Peacemakers set up and ready to go. In this game, you are trying to make peace between various armies. So this is really a skirmish game, and you're going to be the peacemaker, the person in the middle that is, again, trying to bring peace. So I am playing as this character right here. There are 4 different characters in the game. This is Akazan, which is a Finnic fox, and we are facing off today. We've got the macaws and the ocelots facing off against each other in this first scenario. So there's 2 phases to this game. There's the adventurer phase and then also the army phase. And what you are trying to do is get both of these armies' motivations down into this green zone. If you do that, then you win the game. However, if you ever have an army that goes down here to this black space, then you immediately lose the game. And in this particular scenario, the first scenario that comes with the game, there are 6 of them. Anybody can die in this scenario except for the commander of the macaws. If that commander were to die, we would go immediately to 0 motivation for the macaws, and we would lose the game. So, during the adventurer phase, which is the first phase that you will do, that's when you play cards and you try to do different things to maybe help these various armies depending on where you are in the game. So you'll start with 4 cards, and there's different actions that you can perform on them. We've got the survey action, we've got the travel action, the fortify action, the delegate action, and the scheme action. Now, you won't delegate in the solo game because that's passing a card to another player. So rule that one out for solo, but the scheme action, you will do whatever is in this box, and depending on which character you are playing as, you might have a special bonus for that particular card. So you can see here on Cunning Retreat, you can choose 1, or because I'm playing as the fox, 2 nearby units and move them 1 space backwards. And you can see if you're playing as different characters, they have different colors down here on these cards. So that is what you will do during the adventurer phase of the game. Now, you don't have to play all of your cards on your turn. In fact, some of the strategy in this game is maybe holding on to cards for a future turn when you really need to do something big. But we'll go ahead and do a couple of these actions just so you can see what they look like. And so what you would do maybe first is maybe you say, I'm going to play this and I'm going to travel. So you'll just put that into a discard pile. You can move your character maybe 1 or 2 spaces depending on how far you want to go. Now that you're over there, you may decide I'm going to play a different card now and do another action. And maybe I would play this card. Maybe I will fortify this 1 space. And so you will take one of these blue cubes and you will put that into the space that you are with the army unit. Now, what that's going to do is during the attack phase of the game, that's going to help that particular unit that is in that particular space. You can see we can also survey a card. If we were to play this card, we could survey. And so if we survey, what we do is we can pick any of these 4 decks down here, which I haven't shown you yet, but each army has their own separate decks, a left and a right side. And you could survey the top card of that deck. So you could say, okay, I'm going to flip this over and see what it is. Well, this is an advance. Each macaw is going to move 1 space forward. So that's helpful to know maybe for a planning purpose. So you could survey, and then of course you could also scheme. So like on this particular card, you could give up to 2 damage to a nearby unit. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and damage that macaw. Especially this is helpful if you think a certain army is maybe overpowering another one. Maybe you say, I'm going to play this card, and I'm going to go ahead and damage this macaw, and I will just put the 2 damage discs right there. And so you've played those 4 cards. Again, you don't have to play all 4 cards. It's actually probably recommended to save some of those for later rounds, but I wanted to show you what all the actions did. So that's the adventurer phase of the game. Very easy. And then you will refresh. And what you will do is you will draw 4 new cards into your hand, keep them face down, and then wait until your next turn. And that's 4 cards for everybody that plays. So if you're playing solo, you get all 4 cards. If there's 4 people playing, everybody would get 1 card and hang on to it. Because you're playing solo, you're going to keep all 4 of those. So now you move on to the army phase of the game. Okay, I've zoomed out a little bit here to give you a better overview of the army phase of the game. And so each army has a deck of order cards. And the first thing you will do is flip over the top cards of those deck to see what speed these armies are going to perform at. So you've got the ocelots and the macaws here. You can see for the macaws card, their speed is this number right up here in this upper corner, and you're going to add both of those together. So for the macaws, we've got a speed of 11.9 for this particular round. For the ocelots, we're going to roll the 12-sided die, and that order's speed is the die roll. You will ignore the right half. So we would roll, we got a 5. So the macaws are going to go first. Now you will follow these cards in order from left to right. And so looking at this, if this order has the highest motivation or highest speed, you gain +1 motivation, which it does. So we will move that up 1 on the track. And then each of the macaws with this particular base moves 1 space forward. You can see there's different bases in the game for the different armies and the different meeples there. So you would move these macaws forward that have that particular base. So we've got 2 of those macaws that have that base, so we'll move them 1 space forward. Now, armies can share spaces with allies, so it's fine that there's 2 macaws in this particular space, but they cannot share spaces with enemies. So, like if we were moving over here and we were close to the ocelots, we could not be in the same space as them. Now, the ocelots are going to attack. So I'll show you a little bit about that phase of the game. So each one with a circular base will attack in this particular round. And you are looking at this part on the map book to see what they attack, how far they can attack, and then also what their health is as well. So we've got, looks like 2 archers that are going to attack here. Now they have a range of 3, which is higher than the normal range of 2 because again, they are archers. They've got an offense value of 3, so they will attack with 3. And then their health, obviously, that's how much damage they can take before they are defeated. So for these particular ocelots that are out here on the map, this one, well, they usually just target a couple of spaces in front of them, if at all possible. So we can see this ocelot is going to attack this macaw and hit it for 3 damage. So that is already bad for that particular macaw because, again, if it gets up to a certain number of damage, it will be done for this particular game. Now, this macaw, or this ocelot, is going to attack this macaw over here in this space. Because we fortified during our adventurer phase, you will remove this first. This counts as basically subtracting 1 damage from the attack. Some other spaces, like you can see these spaces with the shield right here, those also add 1 defense for a unit that might be in that particular space. So this ocelot is going to attack this macaw, hit it for 3 damage, well 2 damage, because we had the 1 fortify space there, and so now that macaw has 4 damage. So that is how the army phase works. Sometimes the armies will move forward, sometimes they might move back, sometimes they will defend, and then other times they will attack. Now, what happens when an army member is defeated? Well, say this macaw got 5 damage because that's how much health it has, and now it is defeated. Well, now you would put it at this space on the map here, and you would lower the motivation by 1. You would also get what is called a horror card, and you'll add that to the top of the draw deck. Now, horror cards are normally bad things. So you can see here, after you resolve an action, return this face down on top of the resource deck. Discard this at the start of the next refresh. There's other things as well. When you travel, you may move it most 1 space. Discard this when you move to a space with a fortify cube on it. So different things that will come into play that when you draw the cards, you will have to resolve those. And also when you resolve those horror cards, they go into the discard pile. And so when you reshuffle that discard pile, they will come back up throughout the course of the game. So that's basically what you're doing throughout the entire game. You'll go back and forth between that adventurer phase and between the army phase until either you lose the game or you win the game by getting those motivations lowered. Again, there's 6 different scenarios in this game. There are multiple different armies that you can play with. I wanted to show you the box because it is really a feat of engineering how they have set this up here. It is a very nice insert. All the scenario cards are right here, separated into their various decks. You've got your health markers here, your fortify markers here, adventurers that you can play as, and then the bases go here, and then the other armies are right here. So you've got some bears as well that you might be dealing with. You've got the toucans, you've got iguanas as well, and then you've got these poison dart frogs too that you will be dealing with, if I face it the right way, there we go, throughout the course of the 6 scenarios. So that is a look at Peacemakers, Horrors of War. So now I will tell you what I think of the game.
Okay, so you've seen an overview of the game. Now I'll tell you what I liked and didn't like about Peacemakers, Horrors of War. So my first like for this game is obviously the components. All the animal armies, the meeples are all screen printed. They all just look really, really fantastic, and they all look unique and different. So those are really outstanding in the game. All the cards are really well done. I love the map books as well. I think more games should do map books. It makes it really easy to just flip between. And I also like how the map book is kind of like the board as well. It's got slots for the cards. It's got the motivation tracks on there. Only other thing you need to set up is the deck of cards that you're drawing from, and then also the horrors deck, but everything else is on that map book. So in terms of table space, it is a very good setup, and it works very well using the space very efficiently. Also, I do enjoy how this game is scenario based rather than campaign game based. You know, you get so many of these games that are campaign based and have these big sprawling campaigns, and it's really hard to get through them. I like that this is 6 scenarios. You can play any of those scenarios at any time that you want. There are ways to increase the difficulty level of those scenarios too. So if you get through one and you feel like it was too easy, you can give yourself a little bit of an extra challenge. They've got instructions in the rule book on how to do that. And the scenarios do increase in difficulty and are all a little bit varied. They're doing different things. Sometimes you've got more than 2 armies out there on the map. Sometimes the armies are moving more. Sometimes the armies team up or might switch motivations throughout the course of the scenario. So some things to really make it interesting as you are playing. It also does really feel like you are the peacemaker for these 2 armies, because as the adventurer, you never get attacked. You never take damage. You never have to worry about that in this game. You are really, again, like the title says, just trying to make peace between these 2 armies and do a job of keeping the armies alive enough until they get down to a motivation level where they say, we don't want to fight anymore. And so that might mean that a couple of army members for each army die, because that helps lower the motivation level. Or maybe you purposely damage certain army members that are overpowering. And in the different games that you play, the different armies will do different things. So you might have a game where, you know, the macaws are really dominating. And so you've got to, you know, dial them back, rein them in a little bit. Or you might have another scenario where the bears or the toucans are really doing well. So you've got to say, I've got to help the other army in this particular case and make it a little bit more even so that both armies last long enough so you can get that motivation down for both of them to get them in the green zone to win the game. Also, the scenarios do offer some nice variety. Like I said, there's a lot of different things that happen throughout the course of these 6 scenarios, and they do increase in difficulty a little bit as well. And it's also a very easy to understand game and not a very big mental load, which is nice. You know, it's very simple to set up. The rule book's very simple, just those 2 phases. Everything's described. They've even got on some of the map books, they've got tips for you as you go along, especially the first scenario that you do. They've got little reminders of things on the map books. That's just really smart game design. And of course, the insert, which I showed you there at the end of the overview, is really well laid out as well. One of the best inserts I think I've seen for a game. Everything fits in there. It's very easy to set up. It's very easy to get to the table very quickly, which is a very nice thing. So those are my likes with the game. Let me go ahead and talk about some of my dislikes. I think my big dislike here with this game is it just feels like you're not doing a whole lot throughout the course of the game. You might play a few cards and then you sit back and basically watch what our automas go to work against each other and fight each other. And while that is fun to execute those actions, I just feel like there's not a lot of agency here as a player. I feel like I'm just kind of a bystander in this war that is going on. And when you are trying to be a peacemaker, that's kind of the case anyway. You don't have any alliance to either one of the armies. You're kind of switching back and forth as the game goes on. But I just would have liked some more stuff to do throughout the course of the game. I feel like the 4 actions that you can take are good, but I don't know. I don't know what I would have added, but I just feel like I can play cards. I can, you know, fortify some spaces, maybe move around a little bit, be closer to a certain army, and then I just kind of step back and then let the armies play it out while I don't really do anything. And sometimes you've done as much as you can, and then an army will be defeated or a member will be defeated, maybe that didn't have any damage going into the turn, things like that. So there are ways to mitigate that, but again, I just just feel like my biggest complaint with this game is I feel like I wasn't just doing a whole lot while I was playing it. I was just kind of watching the game almost play itself. Also, the scenarios are a little long at times, as sometimes very little damage happens to the various armies. So I've had this happen a couple of times when I've played, where it'll just be a while before an army member takes a hit or before an army member dies. And then obviously you get the horror cards that are added and you lower the motivation, but it's hard to lower the motivation faster when the army is at full strength. So I would have liked the speed of this just to be maybe ramped up just a little bit more, make it a little bit faster in terms of how quickly army members are defeated. Obviously, you don't want it to be super duper fast because then you feel like you didn't really play the game. But some of these games that I played were, 60 to 90 minutes, and the box says 60 to 120 minutes. I feel like that's really long for this type of game to just kind of be going back and forth, playing these cards, and then watching these armies kind of duke it out. I think if you could get it down to a, 45-minute, even a right at 60-minute experience would be really nice for this particular game, and it would feel like it doesn't overstay its welcome, which sometimes it does, especially when you are just waiting for a certain army to attack, another one to possibly lower the motivation. Also, I wish that you could move the army members forward. So there's cards that you can move them backwards, but there are no cards which you can move them forward. So I would like the ability to, maybe get an army closer to another army if I want to have them attack. There's a second scenario which you play, which is kind of like an ocean ship type thing. And one of the macaws barely even attacks throughout the entire course of the scenario, just where they're positioned in their starting spot. So I would have liked the ability to be able to move them a little bit better. Now, I will say, when you get down to future scenarios, there are cards that are going to move those members forward, and you even saw it in that overview. There are cards that advance the armies when you draw from those order decks, but I would have liked the ability to also, as the adventurer, maybe move them forward if I wanted to better position them in various places throughout the course of the game. Also, my only other complaint with this game is the discs are a little hard to track. The health discs, if you have multiple army members in one spot, it can be a little bit hard to track those discs and know which ones are going to which army member. So it would have been nice to see maybe just a little bit different way to track that. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just you have to keep track of which army members have certain amounts of health, and especially if you get multiple ones into a spot, that can be a little difficult. Also, when you move the army members, you got to move the health with them. So it's just a little fiddly at times. Also, I feel like the maps, while they are very nice, are a little bit big. I never had a situation where the army went all the way to the edge of the map or went all the way back on the edge of the map. And I guess you could do that if you moved the army members backwards very far, but it doesn't really seem like there's an advantage to that, because then that's just going to prolong the game even longer until one army gets close to another to attack, due to the fact that the range of most of these armies is 2 spaces and sometimes 3. So those are my thoughts on Peacemakers, Horrors of War. So I'll go ahead and give my final score now. And for Peacemakers, Horrors of War, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I did enjoy it at times. I think the production quality is great. The animal meeples are really, really cool. The cards decks work well. The map books work really well. But again, my biggest complaint, like I said in my dislikes, is that I just feel like you don't have a lot of agency in the game, and you're not doing a whole lot throughout the course of the game, especially as a solo player. Now, if you had more people around the table, you might have more collaboration. It might make things a little bit more interesting. But as a solo player, I just feel like there's not a whole lot going on here. You just play a couple cards, then watch the armies fight it out, and then go on to the next turn. So for me, Peacemakers is a 6 out of 10. Enjoyable, but one that I don't feel like I will play maybe over and over again, but is a unique game in my collection. I don't have a lot of skirmish type games, so this is kind of a fun one to keep for that reason. But again, just not one that I particularly really loved. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and that really helps out the channel. I've got lots of other reviews. I did my top 50 solo games of all time list about a month ago. You can check that out. I get my most anticipated games of 2025 as well. That video's up too, so check all that out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jared. You've been checking out Specifically Solo.